Well, welcome to the Dream Labs. Dr. Contrast Live here. Really appreciate thus far. Before we got started, I just want to acknowledge Nemo. Can't thank you enough for the subscription. You're a real inspiration to me, and I can't thank you enough for the time that you're taking to kind of follow along here as we go through the story in the G12. And Doug as well, really thank you as well for taking the time to stream in with us and take a look at this beauty. And we're going to spend some time today doing a little bit of review, and at the same time going back in and looking at maybe some interior concept work, and I'll explain why in just a moment here. It's been really interesting going through the generation of things here over the last couple of streams. We went back and revisited this thing to make some improvements. So there was an element there, or personality there, but it really didn't have that GTR or distinctive quality about it. So we went back in, to make a long story short, and really began to revisit some of the surface work and some of the detail work. And the biggest area we had really contention with was getting this guy to be resolved back here, and also the cockpit or the survival cell. Really dictated an awful lot of things that we kind of had to really analyze and look at. So from that point of view, the reason I brought this sketch up to begin with here is that very simply, excuse me, and it simply began to show us that some of the proportion changes really merited now a really good look at the inside or the interior depth, because we had a system set up last go around, but it was very busy, very wide and so forth. What I want you to notice about this before I start to show you was that some of the development here for the interior is this. We've really streamlined and slimmed down the cockpit itself. Well, actually cantilever this thing, so it's much narrower and a little bit lower. So I think that's going to dictate some design change here, and I'm going to go through some process here today to kind of get things started to change that paradigm and get a real good statement made in terms of what this concept of the cockpit is going to look like. So with that in mind, I did a couple little thumbnail studies here to look at. First, I went through this little process, just some ballpoint pen sketches on some real rapid little thumbnail studies, which I'm going to work on today. And nothing can really get concrete. I'm looking for a theme or a resolve to get this narrower, tighter, much less complicated concept for the interior space to work here. So I started out with a little bit of an elevation, what the blister looks like as far as the cell is concerned. This would be the survival cell for the cockpit itself, and I'll isolate that in a few moments here, but it's much more streamlined. It's got the cutback on it, headrest integrated into the seating, and this little module on the body side. I think one of the nice things about the last go-around we did in the interior was to get these full screen monitors out there, right hand, left hand, for the driver to kind of visualize and to work with and not be too distracted about going through the race course, etc. Then this little overhead view, for example, the wraparound, that might be still valid, although I don't know, do we need it? My question is always, and I'm going to throw this out to you guys in the audience too, those who are streaming and watching today, is this really still a valid approach, or does it need to be streamlined or simplified? I think really the latter is the key. There's a lot of interest on the outside, and I've always believed too that the interior design work should always flatter or pick up some of the architecture or the character of the exterior. This does in some way, but not quite fully. So again, that's another little thumbnail study. Then went to this platitude of this platform, this little stand-up version of this tunnel console area coming off the seating itself, with some some digital or just different approaches to instrumentation. For example, holographic gauges that just come up and pop through on top of the surface. That's maybe the tabletop piece with the canopy around it. Then this overhead view started to take on some interest. Here's that little cantilever piece on the actual exterior, slimming down the cockpit. It's much slimmer into the seating system, and really floating this console up here and still maintaining the fly-by-wire, the drive-by-wire systems on the seating, on the bolsters, right hand, left hand. But it still had this wraparound feature in it, and I thought, well, we'll stay with it here. Then I went from that little thumbnail study to this, where we had to look at, there's an overall wrap here. Again, the holographic instrumentation out on the flanks, and then maybe the primary piece. Thanks for, hey, man, I hope you're having a great week as well. Thanks, Pixel, for bringing that up. That's a good point. Again, streamlining, this is that little tabletop piece we're referring to here, brought it back in a little concept sketch here, and put the holographic elements in place, and then wrapped it right in the front of the nose cone of the piece itself. And this little digital full panoramic screen that gives you a lot of information while you're running through the track and so forth at full speed, or information you need as a driver to kind of command the vehicle itself. Then last but not least, the very extreme wraparound, and I'm still not really convinced that wraparound is really necessary, but I think the overall character of the shell is starting to take on some really interesting pieces here. Most important is the view out the front, how much and how low you can see in front of the vehicle. The console should integrate unobtrusively, but into the view. Yeah, I think that's a good point, Nemo. I think that's what we're after. So after all these sketches, I went through this. I thought, well, what about this? I kind of slowed things down a little bit. So what about being much more simplistic in terms of keeping the viewing plane open, as your point's well taken there, Nemo. And I'm going to revise this. This is going to be more of a peak system in the glass surface itself. This is more of a peaked operation. But again, notice how the tunnel console stays low. This is an interesting little feature. I've been going to look at this thing in terms of, well, if you're dealing with holography, why don't you make this like a plate of some sort that becomes alive, for example, as you begin to crank the ignition on. This is the circuit itself. This would be the course outlaid on a flat panel that would kind of raise up or change, or this thing could tilt and show you what the course is and what it might look like in terms of where you are in that destination. Let's say you're running at Monaco. You might be going through Tabac or some sort of a chicane area, or in through the tunnel and so forth. That could be a holographic image, and then these pods, I think, start to make more sense in terms of being more informative than a big shelf or a platform area out here just for protective systems. It might be air restraints or whatever else we might need for protective systems. And again, still moving back into the seating system where you've got this fly-by-wire approach, so that the pilot can kind of grip right hand and left-hand side to see what we're after here. But I think this has got some merit here. It simplifies a little bit. It takes some of the clutter out of this. We'll get back to this for a moment here. There's a lot of clutter in here, and I'm not sure if we really need that much. If you look at some of the machines out there now, the IMSA series and some of the GT machines are very straightforward, simple, nothing on the doors. It's all up front. It's very cockpit-like. Very, very, not Spartan, but just enough information to kind of get the job done here. So I think we're moving in on some interesting things here that has some merit. So let me stop there just for a moment and let you see what we're after here. And while we've got it, let's do this. This is what we're really going to be attacking. This is the basic gesture. So I come back off of this thing. It's really doing this, just as a survival vessel, down on the main deck. And that goes back. Then we've got those little foils that come up the top of that piece itself. Now we're into this. That comes back and returns itself. And what I want to stress here is this. The survival cell looks very fish-like. That's what we're after. In that, now we start to integrate into the seating system. And that's all part of the process. Maybe we kind of open that up just a bit. Then there's a little rudder here, a little cross-section piece. Now that second line comes up and goes through here, does that. That's a little bit of a cross-section of what this guy is doing. I don't think it has to be this sharp or this peaked. We want to soften that off a little bit, but I just want to show you in elevation what this is doing. So now we have this. That's that cross member that comes into play. Now let's put the pilot in place here. So there's the location of the pilot itself. Now notice, sight line looks pretty good. We're coming right through that guy. Let's just do this for a second. Let's diagram this thing up. This is an elevation of what we're after here. There's my sight line coming off that seating position. There's in red. I've got a lot of drama. I can see an awful lot right through the nose cone there. That's let me turn it a bit here. Look how much room we've got there as far as sight goes. So I think we're making some sense there. Now let's keep that active. What do we put into place here? Coming off of that shelf, let's do this. Let's put something here that has information in it that hangs off of that. Now the next thing we're going to do is come off the door side and the sill and simplify that by doing this. And this would be that large viewing screen tilted back toward the driver. And rough sketch here, just to kind of block in some form. Then off of that seating system, coming off of this couch, let's put that seating piece back in there. Where that cushion is. As far as seating is concerned, that's there. Now off of that, we grow this holographic piece that just kind of floats off of that. And that begins to stand up and show us what the rest of that circuit looks like when you're in action. So it's almost like a three-dimensional element that comes off of that plane. That's the essence I'd like to kind of pursue here today, where we actually just break this thing down and then come back. There I am. Now put the rest of the vehicle in place here. It's actually doing this. There's ground. Here's wheel. There's the drop-off piece. Comes back up and picks up that slope right there. Now we come back down to ground, into this, and notice, right in that survival cell, that's where that connects. Then it comes back uphill, and it picks up that real strong drive line going back to the rear of the vehicle. So there's my elevation based on that cockpit study. So let me stop there for a moment and see what you think here, guys. Is this making sense now as to why this whole process had to be kind of slimmed down and treated a little differently? I think it's paramount to get in the simplicity of this. Now this has got too much of a peak, and I'm going to revise that in a moment here in some additional sketches. But I think the obtrusion, Nemo, you're right. I think the sight lines are starting to work out real well. And now let's finish this. Pardon me. What we're coming off of this is this. And we've got that same spike comes through here. Now there's the actual nose itself. Look how much room we've got. Nothing's obstructing that view. So I think we're after and personifying that very nicely in terms of keeping that really nice and simple. And again, really interesting how that survival cell tucks in here. There's my secondary line that comes back. There's my intake, so to speak. I don't want to finish the view here, but nonetheless, to give you an idea of where we are scale-wise. There's that intake piece. And then off of this, we've got the rest of the geometry up to the G12 that comes right on through here, begins to work with us, etc. Real loose little thumbnail sketch here. Here's my center line of front wheel. And then right in here would be that spine that connects the suspension systems to the actual vehicle itself. So let me stop there for a moment and get your feedback on this. Let's do this. Pardon me. Let's get this hard line. There's this actual exterior. Slopes in, comes up, and kicks back. There's my cantilever upper. There's my spine line there, and there are my stabilizers coming off the top of that platform. And again, through here, this is the intake. Proportions might be a little off here, but it gives us some idea. Pardon me here just for a moment. That's where we are. So let me stop there for a moment and see what you think about keeping all this stuff all off the driver, very low profile, and yet just enough pod information on the sidewalls to give the driver information that is critical to keep things moving here. So let me stop for a second and let you have a little bit of input. What do you think, Nemo? And Doug, if you're still there, making sense? I mean, there's a lot of profile here, a lot of changes in terms of the proportion. And when we slimmed up that canopy, it made a huge difference in taking the architecture into account for the interior itself. And after looking at the rework over the last few weeks in some of the streams, I just really feel that it was really necessary to simplify this whole process and get it down to a real essence about what information do we need, where are the comfort zones, what are we looking at as far as stream, the left-hand and right-hand interface with the breakup and the holo tray in the middle looks great. Yeah, I think it's got some promise as well. I'm glad to hear you say that, Nemo. I think that's it's got a chance to live here. Now we're going to refine some of this a bit more. It's a little bit on the heavy side yet, but nonetheless, we can look at it from that point of view. That those are the elements we want to work with. Very good. So let's carry on here for just a little bit. Let's take that same theme and go a little bit further with it here. Let's kind of take this guy and move around it. Let's see what we have here. This is my cross member. Now off of that, we might want to just entertain just enough of this. We have a little bit of a visor system here that comes off of that guy. There's some secondary information. So that maybe cantilevers off of that spar, that cross member. So there we are. This comes in now. and opens up the actual profile. Cross section, spar. Let's come down the ground here. Let's get this guy up on top here. We'll just barely see that screen on this side, but let's give this some life here. And there we are, little thumbnail study. What do you think, gang? There we are. Hey, Ballistic, how are you? Again, thank you for joining us here. Very sorry for the missed opportunity. We didn't watch the screen here for a bit, so here we are. Pixelate, Pixelate, good to see you too. Yeah, neat stuff. Really catch the streams anymore because of work comics. Today's the next. Oh, good. Glad you could join us, Ballistic. Good to have you on board here. Let's see. The opposite today. Yeah, pretty cool. What do you think here, gang? There's a little rough study about getting things simplified. We're trying to keep things down to that very simple screen and that very holographic boom coming off of the seating system itself. It has a little bit more of a relationship to the actual upper itself. So we're trying to bring some of that exterior into the interior character of the machine itself. So we'll just kind of hold back here and get some feedback from you all about what this might look like here. So a lot slimmer, a lot simpler, and a whole lot less complicated. I think that's the key to this thing. There's seating overhead and so forth, and the actual driver snuggles inside that guy and becomes part of the whole realm of the interior itself. So that's one approach, and I think there's something to that overhead view, kind of showing a little bit of the contour of the front wheel sponson as it relates to the cab itself, and how it kind of narrows down a little bit. And notice how we took a lot of the peak. For example, let's put these side by side. Took a lot of the peak out of this guy right here and brought it back in a little softer, almost like the, well, it's very much like the actual concept sketch itself for revising. So I'm going to stop here for a moment, guys, and get your input. What do you think? I mean, is this getting closer to the simplicity Raptor? Is it too simple? I don't want to get into a lot of confusion here. It's to me, it should be very, very business-like, extremely non-complicated. When you crank over the switch or the ignition, that hologram comes up and it shows you the course that you're running, and that can be programmed or changed. Just a little heads-up, overhead heads-up display. That could be a simple little console as well. That can get the job done for us. Just little things like that are going to make a huge difference. This little tablet system here, this actually can come back in. Let's do this. Put a circuit line in there. That's the actual course itself. And then out of that, this is where you might want to start. There's the actual starting point. And then there might be some key points along the way that are braking zones, etc. But it all begins to read in terms of almost lifting off the page itself. As where you're going through it, you'll track yourself through the actual course, and it becomes a living memory, so to speak, of where that course is, and it kind of lifts off that tablet and gives you a three-dimensional round looks better. More of the fish-like stream. Yeah, that's that. You got it, Nemo. That's it. So this little holographic thing, I think, could be kind of neat to work with here. So let's put that aside for a second here, and go back in again, and just keep rolling with this guy. There's a cross spar. Body form. Pardon me as I turn this upside down, work a little bit here. A little bit of a breather on the side. Cooling vent of some sort. Comes off that body section. Now, on the center line here, body section. A lot of reverse. Let's get this guy in place. Let's bring that screen right off of there. And there you go. There's another little study. What do you think, guys? Yeah, rounder looks better. More than fish-like streamline. That's great. So far, so good. Rounder is much better. Anybody else? What do you think here, guys? Is this starting to take on some real character, or is it too simple, too easy? You tell me, guys. I'm looking for your input here. You learn that I really appreciate the input there, Nemo. I think getting rounder with this thing is a whole interesting trick to deal with. Absolutely. Fun stuff. Let's just take a little second here to kind of frame this guy. Yeah, let's see if I can grab something here real quickly. Here we are. What do you think, guys? Looks nice to me. Most important should be displayed on demand and context sensitive. Yeah, I think that's a great point too, Nemo. This idea of, I mean, I'm not quite sure yet about how those things cantilever out. I think keeping this low profile and very much heads up, and then also holographic and getting the course or the information you need, and then some of the side panels for vital information and materials coming out of the machine. That's excellent. I think that's the way we look at it here. So let's just do this here for pardon me for just a second. So there's two. Just going to keep this guy alive here for a little bit. Get rid of some of the staining work here we actually dealt with. Let's remove another sheet here. So is it more of, for example, let's go back to that original premise here. Is it more of getting into oops, pardon me here. Let's get reorganized. Entry egress. Yep, we're going to attack that for the next streamer, getting in and out of this thing. You know, you're right. That's going to be part of the process as well once we get this cockpit squared away. I don't think I got all these guys. Hold on a second here. There we go. Let's turn this around here. Let's pick a point of reference. Okay, there's another study right there, guys. It's kind of opening up a little bit. And no, what do you think? How about ingress, egress? Yeah, you're gonna go nice. Okay, okay. Yep. I think we're gonna start looking at some of the openings in this thing here, Naples, very quickly in terms of. I just wanted to get a flavor down on this inside piece so that we can actually take advantage of how's it going to open up and how we're going to really begin to see what's taking place when we enter egress. It's going to have probably go what, butterfly doors or else butterfly or else suicide, go forward with scissors and so forth. How about it? Yep, it's going to be part of the process as well, Nemo. So we're in good shape here. How about if we come back in there just for a second? And look at what's taking place here. I think the side pods, I think the twins look pretty good. I think as far as seating goes, it's a little bit on the abstract side, but I think it's kind of simplifying certain things. Now we want this to be a lot less massive here. I don't know. Does that shape look like this? Let's try another one here. Does that pod start to look like something like this, where you actually is it more of that character, where it actually slims back on itself and it's just a real. Keep losing my paperclip here. And then into the bridge. Should be about right there. Or does that go through? I know there are a couple of suspended just planes that does do that. Release latch. Entry egress. You know, just little things like this. I mean, what are we looking at here in terms of decor? Is it going to be as simple as this? Is there a lot more surface in this thing? Do we want to simplify it just a bit more? Just looking at what ifs. Little hand release. Back to the driver.
think that's just that list. You got verified list. It's just needs to be pulled over that happen like
that kind of character. I mean, there's a lot of ways to treat that shape. But I'm just trying to get a real good simple handle on minimal information on the sidewalls of those machines. We go back to this original sketch again. Look at the exterior here. What we're saying is all of this slimming down of the actual cockpit itself is going to merit a very interesting set of circumstances that might look like that, where you've got a real narrow cockpit, but it's got a lot of that interface in terms of opening up the space itself. So it's not so crowded, but it's more of a sport machine where it's just minimal information that you need. Are the pods going to look like that? I mean, there's a lot of work to be done there in terms of what that might look like. But I think we're getting closer to an overall theme in terms of what we started to look at here because of the nature of the beast itself. We started here, for example, with just some of these first initial sketches, looking at things like that, where we opened up a lot of information, where we really looked at things, a wraparound plane. I don't know if that's still valid or not. I might get your input on that, gang. If you're still out there, does this still merit another look, or are we just kind of pushing too far? Or is it the simplistic approach we're taking today of getting into something like this, where it really becomes a much more of a simple armature? Information pods, cantilevered holographic deck that just kind of opens up and shows us where we are in terms of the course or the track we're working with. There's a little elevation study where the actual pilot in place, the pods itself, and this little cantilever coming off the seat that really kind of tells a story right into here. This comes off, and that's a hologram that tells him where he is. Or should that come off the glass? I mean, I'm just a little bit concerned about which way to go with this. I prefer to keep it on the tablet down below. That could tilt up, that could kind of stay where it is, and that whole holograph could rise off of that plane itself and begin to tell the story. Then we went from that situation into a couple of these studies here. Let's say we're right here. Went from that to that little overhead view of those pods coming off the simple form, and then this T-bone coming off the seating itself. That was interesting. And then we went to this study where we actually opened it up a little bit more. That's got a little more dramatic to it. It kind of simplifies certain things. It just keeps it nice, right hand, left hand. And then all of a sudden that little spar system of that holographic spoon coming off the seating to kind of keep things simple. So it's a real test to kind of get one to work with the other. But I think the matching sequence here is it's almost like that same character as the upper. For example, if I were to look at this in the plan view, what I'm trying to do is mimic some of this shape in the plan view into the interior itself. So there's a relationship of one to the other that really works well for the overall good of the machine. And this is a little bit of an extreme from the rear looking into the cockpit itself of what that might look like in terms of, the actual rainbow itself or the cross member. And obviously the glass will be in here. For example, this is now centered on a glass into here. This comes up and kind of pops over the top. So there's glass in here as well. So that's beginning to look like that. It's just to narrow it down and really interesting focus on simple, powerful, yet very informational, like you said, Nemo, informational context. It really makes a difference running through the course itself. Let's see. I think there was some great progress today. I need to walk my doggo now. Hey, you as well, Nemo. Thanks for joining in. Have a great day, and thoroughly enjoyed it. So I think that's going to do it for the day, gang. I just want to go through a series of these variations on theme. Again, based on where we started, and looking at some of the concepts we've dealt with to get this interior to work. Again, this is a review. This was actually phase one, looking at some overall wraparound screen systems, and it's still valid. Second phase, going into the elevation of where the actual pilot's going to be seated and so forth. We're going to actually trim that down a little bit more. That actually is going to be more of that kind of a profile, much lower all the way through it. So we can get some of that ground, some of that surface out of there. So it's more of this look. There's my tie line right in through here, much, much lower all the way through. So we're getting a little bit more impact in this thing. So that just dictated to him, narrow it down, simplify the actual modules themselves, and let them work. So let's go back into this. That's another variation. This is actual, the last one we did. Let's go backwards here again. Into that one. Overhead view, that same kind of seating system, the pilot inside that shroud itself with a headlamp or probably the headrest itself. Then another 3/4 looking at the actual cantilever, the actual tablet system, and the two side pods for information. A rear view of that same process. Sticking with one theme today to see what's going to take place. And last but not least, just looking at maybe overall looking at some investigation of what the pod character is going to look like on the seat sides or the actual trim itself. So we've got the pod, then a crossover bridge, and some of the information as well. So I want to thank you very much for joining me today, gang. I hope this is as much fun for you as it was for me today. A lot of things covered, a lot of exploratory work. And we'll just keep at it tomorrow. Tomorrow's stream, I'll be going live from about 4:30. I mean, pardon me, 4 to 5, and that should work out pretty well. Maybe we can take this a little bit further and see how we can export. And the reason we're really dwelling on this as a pattern for the last few streams was that we went from a business point of view. We want to get to the place where we got some really good exterior and interior pieces, then provide some poster and some print work, and we put it on the poster on the store, the Dr. Contrast Dreamlab store. So I'm going to make sure we resolve it well, and you're all happy with the content as much as I am, and we'll look forward to it. So that's the reason for dwelling in this and refining some of this material that we worked on from last year. So I hope you have a great day. Real Shadow, hey, Doc, how are you? Good to see you. How you doing, Shadow? Doing well? Are you in or in the office, or are you still traveling? Hey, on the side of the wall. Hey, I guess I must be too loud. All right. So thanks very much, guys. We're looking good here today. And please do, and hope all is well with you. And again, thanks so much for joining the stream here today, folks. It's really been interesting. Good to have you on board. And again, you can visit my website at drcontrast.com. If you have any questions that you want to forward my way, please feel free to drop by and at my email address at jim@drcontrast.com. And really looking really good forward to hearing from you folks about what we do with this thing. And again, thank you so much for joining me today. And if I've done something, said something right, let me know. If I've said something wrong, please let me know. I really appreciate your time and effort. You're important to me, and hopefully you'll build the audience, those of you who are listening. I'd like to build the audience to keep it alive. And again, thank you, Nemo. Thank you, Doug, for joining forces here today. And again, really important. I will sign off with this. I think it's very, very important. Always never forget to remember to dare to be great, because you are. Take care, gang. All the very best to you, and thank you so much. All the best, and have a great day. Thanks. Bye-bye. See you tomorrow at 4. Bye-bye.